Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today on the 3rd of January, the last race in a very busy period, the Christmas and New Year's period, took place. It was the 4th round of the World Cup. With me here to talk about that are Twan.
Hello.
And Tom.
Hey guys.
So we'll be discussing the 4th round of the World Cup, which took place in Hulst. First off, the men's race, it was Aerts with the quickest start with Van der Poel in his wheel. Van der Poel then, after about a lap, decided to push the pace and he opened the gap. And that was mainly because his biggest rival, Van Aert, had some kind of incident in the pit zone. He came into the pit, his bike was ready to be changed, but there was a other mechanic from Tormont who hampered the mechanic of Van Aert, meaning Van Aert missed his bike, needed to walk back, and with that said, there was nobody who really could follow Van der Poel. Van der Poel went on and drove this race comfortably. He won in the end with 1 minute and 30 seconds over Van Aert, who actually was in a pretty interesting battle for second for some while with Pidcock and Vanthourenhout. Vanthourenhout in that battle was the first one to drop, so that meant that Tom Pidcock eventually ended third. Well, that win here of Van der Poel, it's his third win in 3 days. Very impressive stuff, and especially the gap that he won with 1 minute 30 on a relatively fast parcours like this. Ooh, that's a lot.
Certainly, he really looked on it today. Racing in the Netherlands, his home country, of course, wants to put on a good display. And yeah, from the first lap, you could see he was properly on it and just wanted to ride away like he did.
Yeah, really leaving no stone unturned. Of course, will not be racing for like 2 weeks now until probably more, or he might even go on a training camp before then. Just leaving everything out there. Really got in a nice flow today, I think, and was able to gain a lot of time on everyone.
What did you guys also think about the new parcours here? Because if you guys missed it, they couldn't race in the city center of Hulst because they were afraid there would be too many spectators. So they raced somewhere in a field with a dike there. What do you guys think that they did there on that location?
Well, I think firstly the original course in Hulst is definitely one of the better courses on the circuit and a really popular one with the riders. But this one too was actually a pretty good course in my opinion. It had some nice variety, some up and downs with some more power sections and a bit of mud as well, and provided a nice technical as well as physical challenge for the riders. But it did miss that iconic windmill of Hulst and all the spectators, of course.
Yeah, I think this is genuinely brilliant find by the organizers, especially. I think this might be just a parcours for 1 year. I think it served for a great race today, and props to them, definitely.
Indeed, I wouldn't object to having another race here. I thought it was a really nice course.
Yeah, however, I think the city center of Hulst provides more atmosphere, but this wasn't a bad parcours. It reminded me a bit of the World Cup we had in Bogense a couple of years ago, not the World Championships parcours. That one was slightly different than the World Cup, especially with the setting with the sea in the background. I think it's definitely better than some other races, but at this point I don't think that there is need of an extra race in the Netherlands or Belgium. The World Cup should look to expand itself elsewhere in countries like France and Switzerland, but that's a different topic. This parcours was definitely something I think that suited Van der Poel more than Van Aert, and that's why I also don't get the real hype that especially was created by Sporza before the race about the chances of Van Aert, because this was for me a perfect parcours for Van der Poel.
Indeed, quite a few up and downs, more power sections and some fast flowing corners, and it was really evident that this was a course of Van der Poel today, with the kind of most technical feature, the steep uphill climb into a sharp descent, with Van der Poel being able to really power up that climb and ride it consistently every lap, whilst Van Aert and Pidcock and Vanthourenhout, they were all having to run in the latter half of the race. And yeah, he probably put 5 seconds into them every lap on this one bit of section of the course. And with the 10 laps in the race, that could be 50 seconds, already half the gap to Van Aert. So yeah, I think it really suited him today.
Yeah, of course, Sporza are going to advertise some sort of interesting race. Maybe they were hoping for a little bit more muddy and tougher conditions. But certainly after the first lap of the women's, I thought this is quite a good parcours for Van der Poel, and it will be really challenging for Van Aert to actually put up a fight today. Unfortunately, a few things gone wrong at the start of the race, which locked up first place really quickly.
Van Aert actually was struggling for grip in the beginning of the race. However, this was not down to his tire thread that was suggested on the broadcast. He started on the Renault tire, which gives you more grip, and eventually he changed his tire thread to Grifo. So that wasn't the thing here. What was it? Maybe a bit of a lack of rhythm in the beginning, out of his concentration because of that incident in the pit zone?
Apparently it wasn't the tires, so then it would have probably been on him. Maybe tire pressure, but we didn't really see him talk about that when he came for the pits to his mechanic. So that wouldn't have been it either. So yeah, it probably was a bit of concentration, loss of control.
Yeah, I think it just upset the rhythm. The incident in the pits slightly kind of knocked him back a few places in the early part of the race. And that really just allowed Van der Poel to get away. And once that gap was there, Van der Poel just kept going.
Van Aert had some struggles, even fighting off Pidcock for third place. I think Pidcock rode a good race here. This is not the best parcours for him, not the amount of mud or the amount of climbing that he needs to excel. But a third place here, challenging Van Aert. Nevertheless, I think that's a good performance.
Indeed, yeah, a really good performance from Pidcock again today. He had that win in Gather, obviously, back in mid-December last year. But 9th in Zolder and then a DNF in Dendermonde just after Christmas kind of, well, obviously not the results he was looking for, but yeah, 3rd in GP Sven Nys on the 1st, and then 2nd yesterday in Gullegem, and 3rd today, so 3 podiums in 3 days. I think that's pretty good going for Pidcock, and I'm sure he'll be happy with this before he heads off with his training camp with Team Ineos tomorrow, I hear.
Yeah, headed to Gran Canaria, and today giving us a little bit of entertainment. Headed toward the last bit of the race. Had that interesting maneuver on Wout van Aert. Not scared to take the fight to the 3-time world champion. So at least he gave us some entertainment, and I think this was a very good ride by him.
Let's run down the entire top 10 then. Behind Van der Poel, Van Aert and Pidcock, we saw Michael Vanthourenhout in front of Toon Aerts, Lars van der Haar, Quinten Hermans, Laurens Week, and 2 Dutch riders round off the top 10, Ryan Kamp and Corné van Kessel. Toon Aerts, he eventually ended 5th, but his start was pretty good. I think it may be a bit too good actually. He looked to explode after those rapid first 2 or 3 laps.
Yeah, I think the pace of Van der Poel was just a bit too high today. He was the only rider who could stay with Van der Poel, was Aerts, but I think, yeah, maybe he burnt a few too many matches in the first few laps trying to keep with Van der Poel. And ultimately, once he was caught by the chasers, he didn't have enough in the tank to stay with them.
Yeah, I think it's just very tempting to try and hang on to Van der Poel for as long as you can. If you can for a long time, you're probably going to be in a good position, and I guess that is what he tried today. Didn't quite work out, had an okay ride after, I guess, still recovering a little bit during the race, getting somewhere near Michael Vanthourenhout.
Well, I certainly agree. It wasn't a bad race by Aerts, but I've said it a couple of times earlier on. I feel like there's a few percentages missing here this season for Toon Aerts to actually be on the level that he was a couple of seasons ago when he was fighting with Van Aert to win the World Cup. And I just think it's a bit unfortunate, but nevertheless, next week at the Belgian Championships, I wouldn't count him out for a good result there in Molenbeek. Someone with certainly a good result here was Ryan Kamp. He was first under 23 rider here in front of Ronnaar and Ferdinande. In Baal, Kamp was third under 23. Things are looking to be a bit better here for Ryan Kamp than they were a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, this is the kind of performance we have been getting used to from him. Just looking very solid. Well, when you see him come across the finish line, he just looks like someone that's ready to be a pro for the next 10-ish years.
Indeed, over the last few years, he's really developed himself as a rider. He's come into the under 23 ranks, and yeah, taking the win in the World Champs last year. I think he's certainly one of the favourites to defend that title and take it again at the end of the month.
Then the last thing about the men's race here, Iserbyt, we all know he crashed pretty bad in Zolder. Before the race he said that there were some things that still needed to be sorted out about his elbow and that he was riding with pain. However, he crashed there in the first lap. He was eventually forced to pull out of the race because he had too much pain. He felt something tearing in his elbow, definitely not good. Tomorrow he will undergo medical examinations in the hospital, and it's definitely not a good time just going towards the Belgian Championships and the World Championships. If that's broken, he's out for quite a while.
Indeed, yeah. Obviously, we've just had the packed Christmas period of racing with a large quantity of racing, but these January is really the quality races, the Belgium Championships and the World Championships, both coming up this month. Certainly 2 races he won't want to be missing.
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate time to be experiencing these things. Let's hope for him that he can get better as soon as possible and that he can return to his maximum powers.
Then now we're going to talk about the women's race, and Twan will tell us what happened in that race.
It was another quick start by Betsema. It's really been a theme as she got to the first starting row, and it was Brand that was really struggling with this quick start by Betsema, and she continued this into lap 2, and she got a little gap on Alvarado and Worst. They had Vash and Brand chasing behind them, and Brand was slowly distancing the Hungarian, and she managed to chase back on to Alvarado and Worst, and classic style in a classic Lucinda Brand fashion, she attacks them on the road and was able to get away from them as the laps went on, and was able to go in chase of Denise Betsema, but there was simply nothing to do about Denise Betsema today, nearly leading from start to finish as she takes victory here in Hulst ahead of Brand and Alvarado, as Wars made a small mistake and dropped from the World Champions wheel.
In the men's race, there was nothing to do against her countryman Mathieu van der Poel. Here, nothing to do against Betsema. What do we think about this ride? And what do we think about this going forward towards the ever so important World Championships at the end of this month?
I think it's just one of those days by Betsema. We saw it in Beringen. She launched from the start, and no one saw her again until after the finish. It's just one of those days. And there was no lot anyone could do about it. Very impressive.
Indeed, I think the gap of over 1 minute in the super competitive women's racing, we've not seen a gap this big all year, I don't think, so especially on a course like this today, it was a great performance from Betsema.
Certainly think it was a strong ride by her. Nothing Brand or Alvarado or anyone could do against it. And I think Betsema is maybe a bit of a dark horse maybe for the world title, because all the focus is going to Brand and Alvarado, but Betsema, we all know she can ride pretty good in the sand. We saw it in Koksijde where she won the World Cup, and now she wins the World Cup here on a completely different parcours. I think with her form and condition, everything is really good. So I think if all the focus is on Brand and Alvarado, Betsema might be the laughing third one here.
Yeah, I think for the World Championships, we have a podium. It's just going to be in which order, and a day like this makes me really, really excited for the World Championships, because it's probably going to be an amazing race with 3 women that are so competitive.
I would put Worst up there as well. I mean, her results were a bit up and down, but in an interview with a local newspaper after the race today, she said that she's hoping to be able to continue this sprint forwards in terms of form and also in results, because she said she did a couple of blocks of hard training after she had some rest. I think it's definitely paying off. 4th here, it's better, but now it's a matter of being able to keep this result, because after her 3rd place in Zolder, we said the exact same thing. But if next week, or of course the week after, I mean, because next week their Dutch championships are cancelled, if she is able to be closer to Alvarado, Brand and Betsema, then I think Worst maybe just peaking at the right moment this season.
The other thing I really don't like for her, except for her form already, is the fact that, of course, we'll have sand at Oostende, and like at the start of the season, what I saw from Worst in the sand was terrible, quite frankly. So she would have needed to improve on that a lot as well, I think.
Well, let's look at the entire top 10 then. Behind Betsema, Brandt and Alvarado, it was De Vorst, who we also just mentioned. Then it was Capablanca Vasch in front of Honsinger, Pietersen, Kant, Bakker and Van Empel. Lots of Dutch flags here, but I mean, Capablanca Vasch in 5th. The World Cup is definitely her target, and you can see that in every World Cup race she's up there. Doesn't matter what type of parcours, if it's Namur, if it's Hulst, if it's Dendermonde, she's always up there in the top 5.
Yeah, riding very solid races. I didn't think riding Gulligem instead of Baal was a good plan for her, but today finishing 5th, proving me wrong and winning yesterday, of course. Very impressive ride by her.
Vash, another great performance. After the win yesterday, top 5 in the World Cup on such a great course against such a strong field. I think it's a really great result for her today, and just shows again she'll be favourite coming into the World Championships at the end of the month.
I also think Clara Honsinger rode a pretty good race. This isn't the type of parcours that suits her. You've seen it before in Essen where she got 11th and on the faster parcourses where she looked to struggle. But now here today she gets a top 10 place, 6th actually. I think that's very good by her.
Yeah, I think she had an okay start today, which helped a lot. Was able to get up into some decent places quite early on, and from there was able to build on. Of course, today, whilst looking like quite a fast parcours, was actually still quite hard, I think, and it was quite easy to open up a gap, which she made a lot of use out of, especially with one of the longest races women's cyclocross I think has ever seen.
And yeah, it was another great performance from Honsinger as well today. I think she's really showing she's properly adapted to the European racing now. And yeah, in the World Champs, I think we can again hopefully see her target kind of maybe even pushing the top 5, but certainly inside the top 10 for the World Champs.
Let's take a look at our under 23 top 10 then. It was Vos in front of Pietersen and Bakker. I definitely think that Vos is the clear favorite for the World Championships, like Tom already mentioned. But Pietersen and Bakker, they're consistent names that are in the top 10 as well, so I wouldn't count them out. But let's not make this a preview episode for the World Championships. Maybe just something on the performance of Pietersen here, any of you two?
Yeah, I think she did another solid performance today. We've quite often seen her leading off the start sometimes, but a bit of a slower start today kind of showed she could also work her way up through the field. Obviously, she won't have to worry about this in the World Champs, but yeah, I think it was a good performance for her today.
Then I think we had it all for the World Cup here in Hulst. Maybe not the most entertaining race, but after a busy period of cyclocross with a lot of podcasts about races, this week we have more podcasts coming up. We have on Wednesday an interview going up with Zoe Barkstead, the very talented British rider who rides for the Tormans CX team. That's coming up on Wednesday. And then on Friday we have a preview coming up for the National Championships, which take place next weekend. Tom and Twan, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for hosting as well.
And then I hope to see all you guys again when we have the other podcast coming up later this week. Thank you guys for listening, and don't forget to drop a rating if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, and share it with your cyclocross friends if you're listening it anywhere else. See you guys later this week. Goodbye.